Pelvic trim. So like in an airplane, we trim the aileron so that we can fly level. So trim is, if you're here, you're too far tucked under. If you're here, you've got too much bend in your back. So pelvic trim is just nice straightly aligned, like you're putting the weight through your sit bones. Pelvic trim is this way as well. And so what I'm focusing on today more is this. Okay, now you can also imagine another way of thinking of it is that you have a bowl inside your pelvis. I like to think I have this nice crystal bowl inside my pelvis, and in that bowl I'm holding the water. And so if I lose my pelvic trim during movement or during my Tai Chi stance, if I tilt like this, then the water's spilling out in front of me. If I tilt like this, the water's spilling out behind me. If I tilt like that, the water spills, the water spills. So as I'm moving, no matter whether it's rotation or it's stepping, if I keep my bowl nice and level, then my body just rides on top of it nice and easy, and I'm well rooted. So it helps to create that feeling of that heaviness and lightness, the ability to be rooted and move at the same time. Be a mountain and move like a tiger. And yeah. So you might notice that I have this interesting belt on today. Isn't that nice? Styling. You can copy my style if you want or not. Anyhow, it is a just TheraBand through my belt loop, and the reason I have this on is so that it can illustrate the concept of pelvic trim, and how we need to try to hold our pelvic trim during both Tai Chi and Qigong. So the first thing I want you to do is to recognize and feel where the crest of your pelvis is. And the pelvic bone is a large unified bone right really at the center of our body. And when we talk about the quad is at the hip joint, which interfaces with the pelvis. And then we have this, this peak called the iliac crest. So I want you to put your hands on your hips and just explore around, really kind of poke around so that you can feel this iliac crest, superior iliac crest of your pelvis, because what that's going to do is sort of give us a landmark for us to become more aware of what's happening at our pelvis. Now, I'm not changing the concept that all movement initiates in the feet, and that we still have to have that awareness of the doorknobs underneath our feet, and that we're initiating movement through the feet. But then it comes up through the legs, and the legs have a bit of a spiraling and rotating of the bones. And then it's through the pelvis. So when we rotate or we move or we step, the pelvis has to be sort of the pivot point, almost like it's a ball bearing right in the middle of our body. But the ball bearing can't be floppy. It can't be going one higher one side or the other. Then it starts to deteriorate the quality of your posture and your movement and the power coming out of the distal extremities. So this part needs to maintain a level arrangement, your pelvis. So we call that pelvic trim. So most often what happens in our pelvic trim, especially women, is that we tend to poke our hip out to the side. Now, let's just try getting in a boa stance and your pelvic trim. And so for instance, this would be like doing our lotus, okay? But we're just gonna bring our foot forward. So put your hands on your hip, get your pelvic trim, your weight's on the back leg, and you're in a traditional Tai Chi bow stance. Then rotate towards me a little bit, and your weight now through the front leg, and you have to release your quad to keep it even. If you push back on it, you're gonna come up, you see? So we're going to turn, shift our weight, and touch your toe forward, and then back. And just feel what's happening here with your pelvic trim. So you turn, sink into that leg, and when we say sink into the quad, you're maintaining that pelvic trim. And the way I can tell whether you're doing it or not is not through this teaching format, is not necessarily here, because some of you I can't even see that. But if you're not keeping pelvic trim, the shoulder comes up and then it plops down. So if you're keeping your pelvic trim, it's nice and smooth and the shoulders stay nice and even as you do this. And no pushing off the back foot. It's sinking into the front foot, which is part of maintaining your pelvic trim. Let's switch sides now. So you're in a bow stance, you're facing your right corner, turn towards me, rotate, and release this claw to keep your pelvic trim. Otherwise it pops up. So you're releasing, letting this be heavy, sink into the front foot, then you can transition. This side's harder for me. Without that hip popping out, it has to stay in vertical alignment and rotate back. Do that a couple times, and you'll find one side is a lot easier than the other. And again, it translates visually for me here. Those of you that have got it, there's no launching off. It's smooth. Keep your pelvic trim, keep your pelvic trim, keep your pelvic trim, and align your weight straight through, not out to the side.